Hey Diva, welcome back to my channel. And I know that's right, with Natasha Night. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Natasha Night. Think of me as your favorite unapologetic diva who's here to help you fill your cup of confidence and inspire you to embrace your most authentic selves, bask in self love, and harness that divine feminine energy, honey. So if you haven't already joined the Diva family of confident, unapologetic people who live out loud, please make sure that you do so by subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you get a notification every single time I upload a video. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. All right, now let's get started with the video. All right, so for today, we are getting up close and personal. And for those of you who notice that I have a bit of a hoarse voice, it's because on Friday I was teaching fifth graders and I had to raise my voice quite a few times because they were just so ridiculously disruptive, way more than I'm used to normally. It's a lot easier for me to get them in line, but something about Friday, they were ready to get home. And so my voice is very hoarse right now, so I need a lot of like water. Um, Hence why I have my handy dandy water bottle. So actually, I'm just gonna put her right here for whenever I'm thirsty. But anyways, that being said, I have to make a disclaimer since we're getting up close and personal, and I'm sharing a very special tea time about my Monster X Chronicles. So just so you guys are aware, I will be divulging very vulnerable details, and the relationship entails verbal, mental, and emotional abuse. So for those of you who feel like it would trigger you or something that you're not interested in hearing, I would definitely suggest now is the time for you to click off. If not, we're ready to get started on the video. So, where to start? So basically, for those of you who don't know, this is a relationship that I had that was almost 4 years while I was living in Berlin, Germany. I was in Berlin for about 6.5 years. And the relationship with this guy was so bad that I fled from Berlin to go back home to South Florida in 2022. And so let's start at the beginning. So, 3 months into me acclimating myself to living in Berlin, I ended up losing my mom, which is obviously like a really hard thing. She was my best friend, the woman who raised me, who made me who I am today. And so that was like a very difficult time. But at the time, I was on and off with this guy for about a year and a half and then decided to just like completely cut it. And, I was going on dates trying to find somebody. And I realized it was very difficult for me because I was on the Tinder and I didn't really know that the Tinder was a hookup app because that's actually how I got my first relationship when I got there. And so what happened? So yeah, so then I decided, you know what? I am going to cut off all my hair, kind of like this, but like literally to the scalp, which is what I did a couple weeks ago. But now my hair is growing back, as you can tell. And so, anyways, I decided to shave my head all the way to the scalp because I was like, I want to start anew. I need to delete the Tinder, like all the hookup apps off my phone, and get on these like paid websites. I think one was called Parship, like in Germany, where it's like you pay and then you meet people that are actually like looking to settle down, that are actually looking for a relationship because they're paying, right? So I had made this decision. I'm gonna cut off all my hair when I get home, and then I'm going to delete my Tinder. And so I was like super excited for this change. I'm like, this is so great. And while I was at work, I got two super likes. So I was like, I'll just check out the super likes when I get home. And if any of them are worth it, like I'll tell them to send me a text message because I'm about to get off the app. So when I got home, shaved my hair, saw the first super like was a guy. He was attractive, conventionally attractive, muscles, tall, brown hair, light eyes. Again, I lived in Germany, so a lot of the picking was people of a different complexion, right? Like white people, and Asian basically. So, anyways, um, The first guy was very, very clear. He was an F boy. Most of his pictures were with his shirts out, like his shirt open and showing his six pack, and it was just not my thing. So I was like, X. And then the next one was a guy, and his name was K, like Kay. And I was like, okay, he looks very short. Mind you, I'm a midget. I'm 5 feet, nothing, okay? So I'm one to talk. But I was used to taller guys. Like, if I would date guys, most of the time I would date tall guys, like guys that are like 6'2" and above, between 6'2" and 6'5". So that's normally my vibe when I was pretending to be bisexual and straight. So, anyways, I noticed immediately he was short. He looked like he was 5'4" in heels. Like, let's just be real. So I was like, okay, he looks short. He's fat. He's chunky. He's very unattractive. But the pictures were cool, like the locations where he was at. And I loved the bio. It was like the way that he wrote his bio showed that he was a writer, and it showed he was intelligent. And it's like he took time to write that. And then he also put that, he speaks English, he speaks French, he speaks German. So I'm like, all right, cool. Somebody that's also multilingual. All right, cool, bet. So anyway, so I decided to swipe, and obviously we matched. And so he immediately wrote me, like, I want to say, like, no less than like 2 minutes. He was like, hey, Natasha, is that your real name? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, and I said, oh, well, is Kay your real name? And he was like, no, that's actually like the initial of my last name, but you can call me that if you want. I'm like, all right, so what's your real name? He was like, Connor. Again, I am changing the names of certain things in my story just because I don't want the actual names, okay? So certain details will be like slightly changed, but essentially it is the truth, okay? So, anyways, so his name is Connor. I'm like, all right, cool. Where in Berlin do you live? Oh, I don't live in Berlin. Okay, so then how did you get to match me? Because I only have people within like a 50-mile radius of Berlin. Was like, oh, I'm really serious about finding love. So I got the paid version and I put the location to Berlin because I used to live in Berlin. Right now I live in Glasgow and I'm doing my master's. So I'm like, okay, interesting. And so we were talking to him and I told him, hey, like, do you mind giving me a number because I'm going to be getting off this app. I'm deleting this app. And he was like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. So he passes me his number and I write him. And on WhatsApp, and then we just like start communicating. And I found out a bit about him. I'm like, oh, like, so are you looking for love? Are you open? Like, what's going on? Like, what are you looking for? It wasn't really 1,000% clear. Um, like what type of connection you were open to. And he goes, oh, he is open to it, but he just got out of a 5-year relationship. And I'm like, damn, like when did it end? He was like, oh, 3 months ago. And I'm like, okay, and you feel like you're ready? And he was like, yeah. Um, and I was like, okay, well, all right, whatever. So I don't really like think much about it. And so we continued to talk, and I could tell he was intelligent. Like I said, it was very clear. He told me he spoke English, Spanish, and German. Not English, Spanish, sorry, English, French, and German. I don't speak any French, just so that you guys know. It's not one of my languages. But he was like, yeah, I know a little bit of Spanish and blah, blah, blah. So, anyways, we're just like talking, and we kind of connect. So I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. Next day, we're writing. By the third day, he's like, I really want to see you. I want you to come to Glasgow. And I'm like, I have seen Lifetime movies, okay? So, no, I am not trying to fucking go to you. I don't even know you. He was like, oh, you could stay by me. I'm like, you must be out of your ever loving mind. Like, there's no world that I'm going to come to you. Like, you can come to Berlin. It's an hour and a half flight. Like, get it together. So, whatever. And then he was like, oh, where will I stay? I was like, you're not staying with me. So, you figure out where you're going to stay. He was like, oh, I have a friend's couch that I could sleep on. All right, cool. So then that's fine. I can pick you up from the airport though. And just so that you guys are aware. So like in Europe, we don't really have cars. Like that's not really a thing. Um, Especially like in a city like Berlin, it's very pointless to have a car. You're not going to get around everywhere you need to go as quickly as you would with public transportation. So, yeah, the public transportation is out of this world. It's very, very punctual, very, very fast. So, I would basically be taking the train to the airport to pick him up. That's what I meant, like that I pick him up, whatever, just so that I can meet him. So, yeah, so, anyways, he plans to come at a time that I'm free because I had like an extra weekend. Like I think I had a 3-day weekend or something. So he decides to like come. And so I go to pick him up from the airport, and I'm like super excited because I'm like, he's really cool. Like, we really just connect. Like, things just align really well. And so pick him up from the airport, and immediately I see him like coming towards me. And I'm like, yo, this guy is so much bigger than he looks in his photos, and it's not in a healthy way. And he is a lot shorter than he told me. Because when I asked him, oh, like, what's your height? He was like, oh, I'm 5'6". He's a liar. He's definitely given 5'3" in Air Maxes, which are heels for sneakers. So, anyways, and yes, I will be shady throughout this, just so you know, because I literally cannot stand that mofo. So, anyways, what happened? So, pick him up. I'm like, okay, he's not really attractive, but whatever. I like his speaking voice. I like how he talks. So I'm gonna go based off of his intelligence and his like mental things, right? So, anyways, he comes back with me to my place because he's like, oh, his friend, until she's not going to be coming until like the evening because she's like working in the office, blah blah blah. And he came in at like 2 o'clock, so we had like a couple hours. So he's like, oh, I could like drop my bags by you, and then we can kind of head out. So I'm like, all right, cool, say less. So I was like, just so you know, I have to like wash my dishes because I actually cooked before I like left, but I left the pasta bowl like in the sink, whatever. So I cleaned the dishes, and he makes his move to try to like make the schmecks with me. No. So, anyways, but we were kissing and everything was fine. So then, anyways, I was like, all right, cool, like let's head out. So we go to head out. We go and do all the like touristy things, Brandon Bogota. First thing I notice, he does not open any doors. He walks ahead of me incredibly fast. Like, he was just very rude and very unlikable. And then I was like, I'm hungry. Like, let's get something to eat. And he's like, oh, well, I'm vegan. So let's get like vegan sushi and stuff. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, that's cool. So we go to this nice restaurant, and he was like very rude to the wait staff, which should have already been another red flag for me. And I didn't like him. And then at the end, he was like, and then when the woman was like, oh, like, so are you guys ready for the bill? And he was like, yeah, it needs to be split in German. I'm like, ooh. So that was the first thing I noticed. I'm like, okay. Then he divulges that, yeah, he moved from London with his ex, Andrea, um, who was from the States, and basically she left him. Um, and he was heartbroken by it and all of this crap. And she left him, but they actually moved together to Berlin and all of this stuff. Okay, fine, whatever. So then I was like, okay, are you sure that you're ready for a relationship? And he was like, I'm not looking for a relationship, but I'm open to it. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I was like, okay, well, we can continue to get to know each other and hang out. And so yeah, so anyways, then we like spend time, and I just noticed like the whole weekend, he, like I said, he is, everything is what he wants to eat. He already knows the city. He was just very unlikable. But I was at a point where I was very lonely, and I wanted a relationship so bad with someone that I could like emotionally connect with. And he was like a person who was relatively studious. Like, he would read books, and we would read books together. So that's kind of like how we connected. And so, we continued to see each other, and he would come back and forth. And he asked me to be his girlfriend. And then afterward was like, oh, just the thought of titles is too much for me and all this stuff. Like, let me take it back. So I was like, okay, then I don't really want anything to do with you. Like, so I didn't talk to him for 5 days. And then he hit me up and was like, "Oh, like, can we talk it out? Like, I really want it to work out." And I'm like, "I don't appreciate you asking me to be your girl, saying you're fine with the relationship, and then after like backtracking, like, it's either you want to be with me or you don't." And he's like, "No, of course I want to be with you. Let me show you. Let's go on a trip together to Rome, to Italy." So I'm like, "Ooh, that's nice. I've never been like on a trip out of the country with anyone. It's only ever been by myself or with friends." So I was like, that sounds nice and romantic. Okay, cool. Like, let's do that. So that kind of perked me up. That got me excited. Our first trip, he's telling me, like, oh, you can't, he's making rules for me. He's telling me how I can't have a carry-on for this trip. He's telling me that I have to go half on everything with him. that I pay for my own tickets. And I was just like, okay, so you want to take me on a trip, but you don't actually want to take me on a trip. So I'm like, okay, whatever, weird. Um, and he's just like, but you can't have like a carry-on. You have to have a backpack. And I'm like, I can't fit my stuff. Like I'm a woman. I can't fit my stuff in a backpack. And he's like, you're gonna have to fit it in a backpack if you want to go with me. So I thought that was odd, but again, I'm operating from a place of scarcity in this relationship. Because I so badly missed my family who was 5,000 miles away, and I missed my mom. So I really badly wanted it to work. And so I followed this rule and I didn't really think much about it. So now we fast forward. So we go to the trip. It's time for the trip. And, he's taking videos of me sleeping on a very short flight because I was fucking exhausted because I worked late the night before. Anyways, so um, we go on the trip and it's a beautiful, beautiful city. Very like ancient, it's just gorgeous. And the language and the smells and the food, it's just such an amazing place. Like Rome is 10 out of 10, okay? One of my favorites. And so, anyway, so we go and I'm like in awe and I'm just looking at everything and I want to take videos because I've never been to Rome. And so he was like walking ahead of me and was like, oh, you're not going to get into our Airbnb if you want to keep walking slow like this and stopping and taking pictures instead of just enjoying the moment. And I'm like, what is this guy's fucking deal? So, anyways, we get into the place, and then he's all phony with the girl, like, oh, this is my girl. Like, yeah, thank you. And she's showing us like the place and everything, like the hostess, really beautiful Italian woman. So, anyways, then we go, we're like exploring. Everything is fine. We go to eat. Of course, I'm paying for myself. Like, you know what the deal is, right? We already know what we're getting. There's no such thing as him courting me. Okay. So now we get to like, I think it was like the third day, and it was so hot. Mind you, we went in like March, but it was so hot that the like leggings that I had underneath it didn't make sense to wear with the dress and the jacket. So I took the jacket off and took the leggings off, forgetting that I got some thick thighs, okay? Thunder thighs. So I'm walking around, all of a sudden, my legs start shaking. And like, I realized it, like, I'm like, oh, this is starting to hurt. Because we were like walking around. I want to say we were out for a minimum of 12 hours, like, no, no BS. And it was towards the evening that I started to realize it. Because it was like, yeah, because we left at like 8 and it's like 8, 9 p.m. at this time. And we're at this like spot eating. It's super beautiful. And I'm like, my thigh hurts. I feel like something is wrong. So I go to the bathroom and I see that it's like cut open and I'm like, holy fuck. So I'm like walking very weird back and I said to him like, hey Connor, like we're gonna have to Uber home to the Airbnb. I said because like I can't walk the 30 minutes. My thighs are shaved. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, come here because I don't want to like do it in front of people or whatever. So luckily we were like outside and like people weren't passing. So I had him look and he was like, ooh, that looks bad. And I'm like, yeah. Like I didn't know that my thighs were chafing. Like I figured something was weird, but not the sharpest tool in the shed sometimes. Like it's very weird because I'm a very intelligent person, but I am still very oblivious, very delulu, very blonde, in areas that I really shouldn't be. So anyway, so I showed him. He was like, "Oh, that looks horrible," blah blah blah. So now it's time for us to get the check. Tells the guy to split it. He pays his half. I pay my half. And I said, "Okay, yeah, we need to order the Uber. I told you I cannot walk home." He's like, oh, "I don't want to take an Uber. Like, how much is it?" So we go and on the app and we see that it's like 15 euro and he's like 15 euro for something that's gonna be an 8 minute drive and a 30-minute walk. Now we're walking. And I'm like, but I'm in pain. And I said, okay, then I'm just gonna Uber and I'll meet you. And then he was like, if you Uber, I'm not letting you in because I have the key, remember? And I'm just like, what the hell is this guy's deal? So anyway, so I'm in complete pain. I'm wincing the entire time. The man does not give a fuck. He's telling me how I need to walk faster. And so I was very like hurt and very disgusted by that. So I was ready to go home the next day. And so yeah. that was that. We went on that trip, and when I got home, I didn't really talk to him because I was just blown away by it, his behavior, and he kept bringing up his ex and how everywhere in Berlin that him and I would go for the like 2 months that we were seeing each other, that like it just reminds him of his ex and all this stuff, like so ridiculous. So anyways, why I stayed I really don't know. So now we get to the point where he realizes that I'm like distant, and he's like, I really want to be with you. And I said, listen, like, you made me uncomfortable, you didn't really court me. I said, I really don't see this like as a relationship. I don't see this going anywhere because you're not really treating me in the way that I wanted to. And I was actually very, very excited for us to do this trip together. And he was just like, no, like you're taking it wrong and blah blah blah. So he was like, let me show you I'm serious about you. I'm gonna show you I'm serious about you. Mind you, he's supposed to be doing his master's in Glasgow. I don't know if I mentioned that, in software development, and that's why he's there for the year. So I'm just like, okay, whatever. And then he was like, I'll move back to Berlin for you. It's like, you don't gotta do all of that. Like, I just don't see why you would move back. Like, you keep saying like everything reminds you of her and Andrea, and it's just annoying. So he's just like, no, blah blah blah, whatever. So anyways, um, he does end up moving back and staying on his friend's couch. And this was actually the home girl that he knew from the ex. He met from the ex. And she was still in contact with Andrea, but obviously Andrea didn't want anything to do with him. But this one thing about this guy, he lied so much. Like, he said that he saved all his money to spend a year doing his degree in Glasgow. Turned out that that was a lie. That it was actually his dad giving him a loan to pay for that place, and he wanted to take the rest of the money instead of like paying for the place. So that's why he gave it up and moved in with her on her couch. And then he eventually, like, so now we get to like the crazy part of my life. So this part is like the roommate situation. So originally, like a couple months before I met him, I had just moved into what is it? It's called a WG in German, so it's like a roommate situation, and it's this like older Peruvian guy, his 21-year-old son, and he was renting out a room in the place for me. So because I speak Spanish, because he wrote on the ad like only those who speak Spanish, because my German isn't good, even though I've been working here for 5 years, blah, 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 blah. I'm from Peru. So, anyways, him and I were cool. And I remember, like, during the interview process, he was like, oh, like, are you single? And I'm like, yeah, I'm unmarried. And he was like, oh, okay, blah, blah, blah. And then after, like, when I said, oh, like, I have a boyfriend who'll be coming and visiting, he was like, what? You have a boyfriend? And um, he didn't like Connor, because Connor was just very weird. And so, anyways, he told me like, oh, he can't come, and Connor got upset about it. And then the guy starts trying to come into my fucking room, which is wild. So I had to like lock the door all the time, and it was just like horrible. So I'm like looking for another place, but I'm looking for like another like roommate situation, and he's like, no, you need your own place, like you don't need another situation like this, blah blah blah. So he starts sending out applications for me, and I should have already seen that it was a red flag because I was like really busy with work. But I was like, oh, he's so helpful. He's like helping me, and he would send me to like go to all of these, like, they're called Wohnungsbesichtigungen, and like these like apartment viewings. And you always have to have like all your ducks in a row, a bunch of paperwork. It's just like crazy getting an apartment in Berlin. So, anyways, I'm going to like thousands. Like all of my free time is now taken up by me going to all of these, apartment viewings and getting turned down. And then he finds one that is overpriced in one of the most racist neo-Nazi neighborhoods in Berlin called Pankow, and I didn't really know that about it. So I went to it, and because everyone on the side of the road where I was super nice, super friendly, like mixed, but like right across the street and everywhere else in that neighborhood is horrendous. And I didn't know that. So I go, and it turned out that the landlord liked me. So he was like, yeah, like, he was like, basically, the apartment cost him like 300, but he was charging me 790. And so, yeah, he was making a steal from it, right? Because he knows I'm a foreigner. But that's also why it was up for so long, because nobody was trying to take that in Panko, because people already know like how cheap it should be. And so, but I was just like happy to find something. It was completely furnished. So all I needed to do was like literally bring my stuff. Like I didn't even have to, I was able to like sell all of my IKEA furniture, you know what I mean? Because I didn't even need it. Had a king size bed, everything, whatever. So I was super happy. And so I put the stuff down, but I told my ex, I was like, I don't have the money for the caution, for the deposit, because of like how high it is. It's like way higher than other places in Berlin. And he's like, "Oh, I'll just sell your stuff. I'll sell your MacBook. I'll sell all your stuff, and then you'll get the money for it." So that's what he did. And he helped me move in by getting a guy to renting a car from a guy to help me like move all this stuff. But he didn't help me move it up the stairs, which is wild. Knowing that I have really bad asthma. And I was on the fourth floor, no elevator. And then he moved in. He got the other key and moved in. And that is when the nightmare started.